we have some exceptional women tech leaders on the stage here today, leaders in innovation, but sadly, they are still the exception rather than the rule. Although we've been reading and hearing about the dearth of women in technology for years, the numbers show that actually the problem may be getting worse, not better. According to Forbes, in 1984, 35% of tech leaders were women. In 2022, the number fell to 32%, and this year, 28%. Pretty grim. So let's talk about how and why these women succeeded, what allowed them to thrive, and hopefully we will provide something of a roadmap for some of you out there who are also looking to move ahead in this space. I'm Jeanne Meserve. I am the host of SCSP's podcast, NatSec Tech. Let me introduce my guest, starting here to my left with Christine Fox, who is Senior Fellow at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. Sitting next to her is Professor Anima Anandkumar, a Bren Professor at Caltech. And on the end, hello, is Maithra Raghu, co-founder and CEO of Samaya AI. Great to have you all here. So what was it in a world that really wasn't that welcoming to women in tech that sparked your interest in the field? Maithra, why don't I start with you down in the end?
Yeah. So hi, everybody. It's great to be here. So it's true that, while we're seeing some amount of increased engagement with women in technology, there's still a pretty small number of people who are really in leadership roles, pushing the fields forward. And certainly to me, it would be really exciting to see more of that. So my personal journey, my childhood was split between growing up in the US and in London. And in London, I was lucky when I was pretty young in secondary school to get very excited about some of these math Olympiad competitions. So that was something I spent, many years working on. And then, eventually even went to compete as part of the UK national team in various international competitions. But the reason I got excited about this, the reason, I was motivated to look at this in the first place is, of course, having really good sort of sponsor and mentor figures. So my mathematics teacher back then, really looked out for me, saw my interest in the subject, encouraged me to, explore it. Similarly, my parents, who both have more engineering backgrounds, were very encouraging of me pursuing a STEM career. And very early on, tried to share some of the opportunities and experiences available. And so, what I'd really like to see is, for that to be more of an organic process, like women can go further along in their careers, not sure about what to do, and they're, seeing all of the excitement, opportunities, and interesting career paths that STEM has available.
Anima, what encouraged you to take this path?
Yeah, right now we don't see a lot of women in tech and in science, but the ones who are there, especially senior women, continue to inspire me. Like yesterday, I was in the room with Arati Prabhakar, who is the head of OSTP, and seeing her drive the AI agenda as well as the science agenda for the nation was hugely inspiring. So to me, growing up, it was everything, in terms of my mother being an engineer. In fact, one of the first engineers in my community, while she was growing up, her parents, my grandparents, encouraged her to be good in math and science. But when it came to joining engineering, they were afraid that, she wouldn't find a worthy husband and there would be a high bar for somebody who was educated. So they hesitated. But my mother, being how, tenacious and perseverant she is, she went on a hunger strike for 3 days. And, she said, no, I'm going to be an engineer. I will do whatever it takes. And she became an engineer. And then fast forward with my dad, they both started a small-scale factory, manufacturing parts, and even bringing some of the first computerized manufacturing to my hometown. And so seeing both kind of the mathematical foundations, but also seeing engineering happen in the real world, and thinking of computer programs as not something that just reside within a computer, but touch the physical world, produce these beautiful metal parts, and see all of this as being highly interdisciplinary, right? Not just being focused on one topic or being siloed, but thinking broadly of how science and engineering touches the real world is what got me excited. And as I kept pursuing through high school, looking at the mathematical formulations and foundations in physics and computer science, I was like, oh, I need to do something that touches all of it. And, it was by chance happened upon AI as being one which there's a lot of interdisciplinary areas that you need to understand AI and build AI, but also AI touches almost everything we speak of. So I feel very lucky to be where I am today, Pia.
Christine?
So my father was a nuclear engineer. I'm an only child. So there's a lot of literature about the only child or the oldest daughter. But for me, it certainly was true. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'll never forget, I was talking with my dad, and he's like, what are you going to major in when you go to college? He never questioned that I would. And I said, I don't know. I don't know what I want. He said, well, you're good at math. If you can do the math, you can do anything. And I thought, well, I don't have any idea what I want to do. So that sounds pretty good to me. And it wasn't a question in my house, in my family, and with my father. And I think, honestly, that was like the most important thing for me, was that it was never a question. I could do the math. Math would give me opportunities to do cool things in my career. And so I majored in math.
I'm curious, because all three of you have had success when so many women don't, if you feel that you had some special traits or skills that allowed you to succeed in this environment. Christine, I'll start with you this time.
So I thought a lot about that, honestly, because I do see women struggle. And I believe that the thing that I held on to the most was just that upbringing, that it's not a question. You can do the math. You should go to school and study math. You could do whatever you want. And so when I ran into people that said, what are you doing here? You're a woman, which happened from time to time. My early days in particular, it's kind of like, well, no, what's wrong with you? And I didn't dwell on it. I didn't think too much about it, because it was just so formative in my early years that I could do whatever I wanted. And I think that's just critically important. Whenever my male colleagues say, hey, I've got a daughter and she's really good in science or math, and they ask, well, what can I do? I say, just tell them they can do anything. Just tell them that all the time, because I think that's really important.
So you obviously had that at home, but do you think that there are other skills and traits that you bring that a guy might not?
I think for me, like, certainly all that support helped, right? So because it, again, didn't make me feel like, oh, it is weird for a girl to be good in math or be interested in engineering. It was considered natural in my family. I also have a brother, but we would together play with Lego sets and build like all kinds of cool stuff. So it kind of like was something that naturally was my interest, but there was all the support together. And then, like, to me, in like, when it came to like more college level, where there were very few women, at that point is where I saw a transition, because until then I was just kind of like going through the natural process of just being excited about math and science, doing well in exams, moving forward. And then I saw for the first time there's so few women in the class. In some of the classes, I was the only woman, and like, oh, this is what it's gonna be from now on. And I think from then on, a lot of this was thinking about how do I bring more women in, at all stages, even if they're, say, somewhat more junior to me, even a year junior, how do I help them? And that kind of kept me going, because I was not just focused on how do I solve this for myself, but how do I also help others to do it? And I think trying to not make it too personal, but see how, as a broader group, how we can address some of the systemic issues. And, whatever I can do in my control now as a faculty, I try my best, right, to make it easier for the students. I think that helps. But it's, there's always going to be challenges.
So, Maithra, you've started your own company. You're a co-founder. I've often heard it said that diversity within organizations promotes innovation. Have you found that to be true in your career?
Yeah, definitely. Because even beyond sort of the measures to try and be more inclusive, people experience, lives differently because of, like maybe your gender, like your background, your experience. And so just having some of those perspectives ingrained as like part of the company, as part of the ethos is really, really important. Like one thing we do tend to see even now is that sometimes women candidates may not negotiate as much. And me being the CEO, I'm aware of that. And so, you try and, make sure we're being really inclusive, make sure people are given like opportunities to grow, learn, and like, we're really, giving them a great place to like, start their careers off and sort of grow further from there. So definitely. And, you mentioned kind of qualities that like really help in this field that are, that's pretty male dominated still. Definitely the environment, I think, still plays a big role. It sounds like all of us have had, parents and sort of figures around us that have been really supportive. And that's the thing I'd really like to see change. Like I see that, men sometimes don't have that, but they still pursue careers in this field. But for women, it's almost instrumental that you have this deep belief to get people to pursue this field in the first place. But besides that, probably some amount of perseverance is helpful, especially when you suddenly find yourself in the class and just you and, everybody else is a man, to like, kind of ignore that and kind of focus on like, pushing forwards, to be seen for like kind of excellence in your contributions in your field instead of, your gender. I think those sort of traits are like really important to keep at it.
So a thick skin definitely sounds like something that helps. I'm curious, Christine, if you think that in fields like science and technology, are women more apt to challenge traditional thinking? Have you found that to be the case?
So I don't know that they're more apt to challenge traditional thinking, but I do find that groups of women, they kind of coalesce naturally because they want to explore in a collaborative way. Now, that's a broad generalization. That's certainly not true of every woman I've ever worked with, but I do find in general, women kind of come together because they want to explore and they don't want to just jump to the answer and pound on the table. And I think that is an important feature of all collaborations, men and women. And I think women tend to bring that. That's been my observation anyway.
So, Anima, what have you found in your lab?
Yeah, I mean, I can say like personally, I am someone who always questions all the set ways and traditions. I've done that throughout my childhood to now even thinking about not just, things within a discipline, how they are done, but really think of new ways. And that's really helped me as an AI person because I'm not just thinking, only about like, how do we design better AI, but what is the impact it can have in so many domains where there are established traditional methods, right? So one example is weather forecasting. Yesterday, I was in a workshop on AI-based weather forecasting, and we built the first model that was fully AI-based weather forecast compared to the standard traditional weather models. And there was a lot of skepticism in the field before that, thinking, oh, there are decades of innovation that has happened with these weather models. AI, what do you expect can come one day and change all that? But we just, we went ahead and just trained on all the historical data. We wanted to see what happens. We were curious. And it ended up being tens of thousands of times faster than traditional weather models. So we can come up with entirely better ways to do risk assessment of extreme weather events and think of like, scenarios that were not possible before with traditional weather models. And so personally, for me, I think, thinking of like not just going with the system, but always questioning and finding new ways to do it has helped me think of new ways where research can be done in AI.
So I'm looking around this audience, and it is largely women, and I'm sure they would like to know, are there key entry points and opportunities that you would point them to? Maithra, do you want to take that first?
Well, I'll speak for AI and, as a founder of a company, I'll say that right now, obviously that area is seeing like a huge amount of growth. So maybe we have an interesting thing happening with the economy where, you're sort of seeing some tensions at like kind of the macro economic level, maybe like some of the largest companies, there's some sort of slowdown in growth. But on the other hand, there's like a new sort of technology wave that's really getting started. And a lot of new things getting off the ground, a lot of excitement. So I definitely, strongly encourage with women in the audience, like, women generally, to pursue those, because those are also like natural growth opportunities. So sometimes like what women need is like, to be somewhere where it's sort of naturally like growing, and like, you don't have to kind of keep sort of fighting for things all the time, which can get exhausting, honestly. And so a lot of these places have, huge amount of like kind of growth and opportunities across research, across like, new companies getting started, across various kinds of like, interorganizational collaboration. So, look out for those, look out for like, diverse opportunities. There's like a lot out there. We'd love to see more of that.
Would you agree, Christine, that in fact, this is a great moment for women who want to get into the field?
Absolutely, without question. I mean, let's face it, this nation does not have enough people trained in STEM to meet the demand and the opportunities. This is just a booming area. And so if women hold themselves back from going into this environment because it looks a little intimidating, we're just going to lose all that talent. And I come from a national security background. For the nation, that's not very secure. We need all people to be able to participate. So my entry point recommendation is figure out what you want to do and just go try. And you do have to have a little bit of a thick skin, and you do have to look for people to work with and collaborate with that you can kind of pal around with a bit. But the opportunities are amazing and the rewards are amazing.
You're an entrepreneur, and I have heard in other contexts that for women entrepreneurs, getting money, getting VC money can be more challenging. Was it for you?
Yeah, gosh. So we were lucky with our first funding round. I'll say we have had a really like supportive sort of set of investors across the board. I'll say that like what I've seen in the so I was a researcher for a long time. So I did AI research for many years. I was at Google Brain for several years before starting this company. And I do think like the entrepreneurship ecosystem could probably do more to sort of support women. Like I think the research ecosystem, I felt like, I saw things get better over my time there. Anima, you'd probably have more thoughts on that. But yeah, for the entrepreneurship ecosystem, I think it's doable, but like, they expect you to sort of put more out, sort of just be more out there. And then, sometimes women are a little, less forthcoming about like kind of their successes or their achievements. And that's where it can be quite challenging. Like I see a lot of like male entrepreneurs, like, kind of out there talking about, how like fantastic they are, like doing like a really good job of marketing. And women are just like, sometimes a little bit less likely to do that. And unfortunately, that can also have effects on sort of things like fundraising. But, I'd like to think that things are getting better. Certainly in my personal experience, I've had good conversations. You might want to, you might have to do some work to like, pick the people you talk to. Like not everyone's going to be, sort of as open-minded and welcoming. So you're going to have to, find those kind of key people. And I think that's still really critical for women throughout their careers. Like find the key people who really believe in you, who kind of see your potential, and who you can work with in various ways.
Anima, you're in an academic environment. So are you seeing more women go into STEM fields?
I've been both in academia as well as in industry until recently. I was at NVIDIA, so I see it from both directions. I think in academia, it's been a lot better, at least at Caltech. I can't say broadly in the US universities because we know the computer science numbers are pretty dismal. But at Caltech, we've been, not just lucky, it's been a lot of hard work by not only faculty, but others who've been invested in improving diversity and inclusion at the university. And we are more than 40% women in computer science, which is nearly, half of the class in computer science is women. And this is something we are also nurturing to take it to the graduate school level and postdoc faculty. And, it takes, there is the story of leaking pipeline, right? So when I came to Caltech, I was very surprised that I was the first ever female tenured faculty at Caltech, which, is mind-boggling.
What year was that?
2017. Not great.
Wow.
So, but, yeah.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
computer science has not been historically a big, field at Caltech. So, but fast forward, we have now a number of female junior faculty, and they're kind of going through the tenure track, and we have more of that. So, I'm proud to see within that time things have improved, but a long way to go.
Christine's dying to pick up on that strat.
I can't believe that. You were the first in 2017, you said.
I know.
That's amazing. Well, how many tenured women are in the program now?
There's one more, Katie Bowman.
So we're at two in 20.
Faculty members. How many out of
So Caltech is small. Overall, we are just 300 faculty across campus.
But wait a minute, 300 faculty and 2 women on tenured
Computer science, so within computer science. So that's
So you mentioned that this took effort. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, which includes women, is under fire. Do you all worry about whether that is going to make us regress even more than the numbers tell us we already have? Maithra, I see you going, yes.
Yeah, I do worry about that. Like, I feel like we're seeing maybe a lot of extremes talk at each other, and that's the part that's really hard. Like, we've had, we had sort of like a huge push sort of one way, like during the pandemic, some of it very justified, but I think what we are seeing is sort of like a reaction to that almost, which is also just as extreme in nature. And maybe the thing I worry about the most is sometimes the people with the most extreme perspectives are also the loudest. And you can sort of see that there's sort of all this moderation, all these people who actually agree on things. And that kind of thing is very instrumental sort of as a foundation for progress, as a foundation to forge collaborations and, help people along their journey. So I worry about it a lot. I hope it gets better. I feel like it might be calming down a little bit, but, TBD, I would say.
Christine, what do you think? DEI on the way out, and will it hurt? How much?
Yeah. So I've been doing this a long time, longer than the others on this panel. And for the first half of my career, I just never wanted to talk about women's issues. Never wanted to talk about being a woman in the field, bring any attention to being a woman in the field. I was a person doing a job like any other person, and I wanted to be judged only on my capabilities. I think that's still all of our dream. But then I kind of opened my eyes and saw that it could take till 2017 to have a woman tenured in computer science. And so maybe we needed to talk about it a little bit more. And I became more aware that you do need to talk about it. And so the question I have, and I don't have an answer, is where's that balance, right? Not talking about it at all. Okay, that's not okay. I get that now. Extreme talking about it, I think, does generate backlash and is not helpful. I certainly don't want it to become a buzzword or a thing, and I worry that DEI is a little bit of that too. So how do we have an honest conversation about it that's constructive? I don't know. I think we're still searching.
Oh, I just going to follow up on that and say, yeah, I would love to see more attention given to people with the more moderate opinions. I feel like that's what we're really missing. Like there's again, extremes that are very, very loud, and it's easy for them to be loud. But what I would really like to see is maybe more initiative taken to either profile people who have more moderate perspective, get some of those opinions in the dialogue, just so that we can see that there's sort of this, there's a place to sort of talk about it, but in a constructive way, as you said.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in fact, that has been happening in a lot of places, right? I mean, social media kind of takes a life of its own. And, lately I'm very thoughtful about what I say in social media is mostly research. But, on the ground at Caltech, we have a number of initiatives to bring in women, both at high school level, right, but also undergrad level, to help them see what are the benefits of graduate school. So there's a lot of focused programs like that are not, that are helping create awareness, that are helping create a network of other women and other allies, other support network, but of course not making changing the requirements or not being meritorious, right? So that is, I think, the misinformation a lot of these, what I would say, trolls online spread. And whereas on the ground, the way we do it is really to improve it for everyone, improve the environment, not just for women, but for everyone.
So, Maithra, AI has come under fire from bias because a lot of it has been designed and fed by white men, frankly. Um, does that make it particularly important for women to enter the field and maybe particularly women of color?
Yes, absolutely. And I have sort of a funny anecdote on this also, which is, so I'll turn it to my panelists and also the audience. So like, how many of you actually keep up with like AI models and like releases and things like that? Okay, you definitely do. Okay, and then I see audience members raising their hands too. So of course we've seen a lot of development of these sort of foundational models, different companies, and so who kind of kept up with sort of some of the press surrounding like Google's latest like Gemini model release? Okay, it was everywhere. Everyone saw that. So for those who didn't see it, Google released this like Gemini, this new sort of AI model. And actually what we saw was like kind of the counter thing happen. Like when it was asked to, generate pictures of various people, it would just like, refuse to generate pictures of anyone who was like a white man, basically. So that's obviously, maybe going too far in the other direction. Like people should have like caught that sort of sooner. But having said that, sometime after that incident, I was using ChatGPT to generate images for some slides that I was making, which is a great use of some of these AI models if you can get them to work. Because I tried multiple times to generate a picture of like a woman researcher, and they were awful. Like they looked like nothing like us. They looked like maybe it was like a model or something like that. And I don't mean to pick on ChatGPT. It's just to say that there is really this bias still, and sort of this sort of the Gemini thing got sort of all the press, but really when you look at all of these other models out there, they still struggle basically. And so, yeah, I think it is. And I mean, I caught that because I was making these slides and I was like, I would really like to see a woman researcher on my slides. So I'd like that to be generated. And it was very hard. So there's a lot to like fix in this technology. And I think it is especially important for women to be there. Especially as this technology, sort of like takes wings and there's, much more coming. We're going to see a lot. The things that we're doing now are going to be foundations for many things that sit on top. We want to make sure they sit on the best foundations possible and the best, in considering gender equality and so on.
Christine, I want to talk to you about your career in national security. You were the highest ranking woman in the Pentagon when you were acting Deputy Secretary of Defense. Are there some specific challenges that you faced as a woman in the national security environment? And what advice or tips might you have for women here who might be interested in that space?
Sure. So first of all, I did face challenges, of course, but honestly, most of the challenges I faced were early in my career, and it was a time when I started my career when women couldn't go to sea, women couldn't fly jets, basically women were not a part of the military except in supporting roles. And now, of course, that's changed. But when I started and I did go to sea to do my analysis work to get the data that I needed, that was like, oh my gosh, you can't do that. So it took a little while to get going in my career in the early days. But I think because I did, and because I was moderate, I think that's key. And I hope, because I contributed, by the time I got to that position, I was known and accepted. So I think my advice is have a long view. You do have to have a tough skin when you're doing things earlier. Hold on in yourself to the confidence that you have a right to be here. As long as you can contribute, you should contribute and focus on that. And then for me, I was fortunate over time. By the time I got to senior positions in the Pentagon, I was accepted. I was a known person. People actually wanted me to come to meetings, invited me. I was still often the only woman in the room. So work to do, right? But I think that you have to have that long view.
So bro culture has become such a thing that even those of us not in tech know all about it and how difficult it can be for women. Has it gotten better?
Well,
I think that means no.
there is more awareness. So, I think that's the
But
aspect.
is it changing behaviors?
It's also, I think, maybe gotten a lot of that behavior underground, right? And that doesn't help if you're also excluded from that. So I know because of that awareness, there's also a lot of worry of how, men could be perceived for their behavior. So I think that's a good thing, but that doesn't mean like, excluding and like kind of taking that underground is the solution. I think there are ways we can all have fun healthily and still be inclusive. And hopefully this is a process through which we get there.
Yeah, I think we haven't quite figured out the right recipe for sustainable change. Like I think we've seen like sort of a lot of extremes back and forth. And you talked about initiatives that you've seen. So maybe the answer is like initiatives that are more on the ground, that are not reliant on like social media, which I think has actually been really hard for any kind of meaningful dialogue. Like there we see sort of a lot of extreme, like people sort of points of commonality are missed. It's very hard to have a good foundation for progress. So one thing I'm hoping is that maybe we, actually have initiative where we're taking some of the conversation offline, maybe come and, getting that kind of engagement. And that might be sort of much more lasting and much more sustainable.
I'd love to take some audience questions if you guys have any. Do we see any hands? I've got, here we have one right here. Do we have a microphone? Do we have a microphone? Yeah, Is there a mic runner in the room? Well, maybe not. Well, why don't the questions?
Yes.
Just you speak loudly and then I'll repeat it. I need on how we're trying. Yeah, try. Right. Well, okay, bottom line question. How do you build trust in AI in communities that have an inherent distrust of AI?
I mean, I think it starts with working at the grassroots and really, right, like not engaging with them for a length of time. And that includes kind of having like the basics of AI education. I think that's something that is badly needed across communities, right? The ability to use these AI tools, but also at a high level, understand what are their limitations, what are they good at, what are they not good at today. So giving that perspective, as well as acknowledging the bias that is present in these tools, like Maithra earlier, mentioned, even like kind of many years ago when AI started getting into face recognition and those technologies, I was one of the signatories of a letter saying we should wait before we put this in sensitive scenarios like law enforcement, right? So where if it's on a body cam and this is in real time, people are making decisions based on mistaken identity, and especially there are racial and other demographic biases present in these models. We should carefully test them before taking them to the real world, to the wild. And I think that's the aspect too. The trust is built by ensuring that these tools get tested well. And I know the NIST, the National Institute of Safety and Standards, are looking into coming up with careful metrics for different kind of AI models. So working with them and taking the inputs of different communities when it comes to how we test these models, I think is the way to build trust.
I think we had another question back there. Why don't you walk forward and the mic is coming to you, I think. The other way. He's right there.
Hello? How's Tough?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that you had brought up in reference to DEIA. So you mentioned a moderate approach to DEIA. So I was just wondering if you could describe a little bit more, what would that look like today?
Maithra, that was sort of your pitch for moderate approach to DEI. What does it look like?
I think, okay, so I don't have all the answers, firstly, but I think probably a balance of profiling both, like showing examples, having dialogue around women who are like, really successful in their fields, for not about being women at all, but just in their fields, like their contributions, what they're up to. But then within that also, like, tying in some aspects of like their journey of being a woman, like what's hard, like, what was like, what kind of advice they have, like something kind of moderate that other people can like learn from, but then also like, appreciate like kind of their contributions just like to the field or to their area themselves. And then maybe kind of really creating a community around that, like initiatives of various kinds, as like were mentioned, that aren't as much like, sort of like finger pointing or, getting people to react via fear, but rather like, trying to like embrace the fact that, look, actually probably most people are like supportive of having, like more women in the workplace, more women like in various kinds of leadership roles. So like, can we like focus towards that and have some more like kind of constructive approach there?
We have a question down here in the front, in the white shirt.
Hi. So it's not necessarily a question, but more of a challenge for us as women. Kind of.
Can you put the mic closer to you?
Yep. So not necessarily a question, more of a challenge for us as women in this space. Earlier, there was a question that may have alluded to like, hey, what are some of the qualities that you might have as a woman that a man might not necessarily have that make you such a great leader in the industry? And one of the words that was used was perseverance. And then we immediately used thick skin.
I used it. Although no.
We immediately used thick skin. What if we used traits to describe perseverance that were traits that are put down in the industry as like female traits, like emotional intelligence, compassion, nurturing, and just the way that we communicate these things, taking on more of traits that are typically seen in females versus males, and say, hey, perseverance means we have emotional intelligence. Perseverance means that we have a nurturing and compassionate composure when we enter into these spaces, because the language that we use is so important. So it's more of a challenge. Like, let's think.
I'd love to know if the premise is correct. So I come out of an industry, broadcasting, or none of those things were valued. So are they in fact valuable traits to have in tech?
So I'll answer to that. I actually think emotional intelligence is like a very valuable like trait to have, and actually does go sort of side by side. It's definitely one part of perseverance, because you kind of need to know how to like navigate situations. And unfortunately, as like a woman, you might be in more situations that are less welcoming to you. And so navigating those like effectively in a way so that you can, still do well, still like kind of be a leader in your field does actually require a lot of that. So that is something that, I think it's really important to bring to the table.
So to me, I think it's like, expectation that you have like good nurturing or whatever, like female traits is also like can work against women, because then you're expected to be both a tough manager or a tough boss, whatever, tough supervisor, and at the same time be also nurturing, and they can work against each other. And I think, to me, there are certain things that naturally just work well if, in terms of having good emotional intelligence and nurturing to help build a good rapport and help people succeed. And that's personally fulfilling to me. But on the other hand, if it's treated as an expectation and a bar that you need to be more nurturing than men, that I think also works against us.
Christine?
If I could just add, I think that emotional intelligence and empathy are important attributes of all leaders. The best men, and I've worked almost my entire career for only men, the best leaders I've ever worked for had those qualities, and they cared about me, my career, my development. So I completely agree. I don't think we want to distinguish those or associate those only with women. I think good leaders need those qualities, and I think that's recognized. I think the challenge is women often have those qualities, but they're more reticent to speak up or participate in a more aggressive world. And so you have to have and create opportunities to demonstrate that you have those qualities. The qualities should be gender neutral.
I think there was another question over there. Yes, right here.
Hi, thank you for a very great session. My name is Harsha, and my question to you guys.
Bring closer to your mouth.
Really? Okay. Okay. So you've been talking about all the challenges that we face as a woman in various industry-specific AI. I totally relate to that. There's also a book called Invisible Woman that I read, and I came out very angry, totally biased, towards men and things like that. My question to you is that, do you guys recommend any platform which is a safe space for women to receive training or mentoring opportunities to motivate them, especially with, all in the AI world?
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, there is the Women in Machine Learning, that is along with the popular machine learning conferences. So there is a day before the conference where there is Women in Machine Learning, as well as in other affinity groups. There's Black in AI, Latinx in AI. So these various forums have like meetings and like presentation of papers. So there's a lot of good technical material, as well as an opportunity to connect with other women as well as allies. So we have like some of really, well-known male leaders as well come and attend those and mentor the sessions there. So I would recommend that.
Thank you for the question. We have another one right up here in the front.
Thank you. So I'm a little bit on the older side. I'm 58, but that's still not old enough as the people in this room.
Where I am. So
Yeah, I feel it, but I get you. But within my lifetime, women couldn't get credit cards without their husband signing for them. So we have only been valid beings for a very short time, and people of color and people with disabilities and immigrants and quote unquote undocumented. So we've come a long way in a very short time, but I think it's time that we stop doing the work and they start changing. So, for example, the qualities that you were talking about, we typically call soft skills. No more. Power skills, okay? These are power skills. They do change the dynamic on the teams and the leadership and the collaboration. So how can we, because I'm tired of doing the women's leadership and the Anita B and the Grace Hopper and all of these things, and even this, where we're here to talk about what it's like to be excluded. When do we go, and I'm going to do something unkind for a moment because you look nice. When do we go to that man and that man and that man and this guy and say, you're going to do it and start making the change? I am sick of the programmer culture. I am done dealing with women that embrace the programmer culture because they think that's what it takes.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying resonating for any of you, and what do you think?
Well, I knew there was a reason why I wore Barbie pink today. Do any of you have thoughts on that?
I mean, certainly there is an increased awareness among, what we call male allies, but it should be all men as well, in terms of that these issues lie. I know they may not always have all the solutions or kind of, fully understand, but they know the presence of these issues. And I think that is progress to me. It's not sufficient, but I think we've taken these first steps, and a lot of it, I think, comes from building those support networks and really ensuring, not just for women, but anybody who feels traditionally excluded in these tech communities. How do we improve this and just improve the general, mental and emotional health of everyone? Like having high stress situations without the right outcome, or without knowing you would be rewarded for taking on that stress, right? I mean, we shouldn't ban high stress. I think high stress towards a goal that is well aligned can be really good. So we need to balance the, just health of everybody in the workforce with also feeling fulfilled or included in our workspace.
So we're not there yet. And in the absence of being there, I want to put some practical suggestions out there before our time runs out of some things women can do to improve the odds of their succeeding in the workplace. mentorship. Important, Christine?
Absolutely critical. And it doesn't have to be a woman, right? I think that I had all male mentors and they were fabulous. So mentorship is critical.
And to adding to that, I mean, mentorship doesn't always take the form of like, someone more senior than you, like guiding you. Sometimes it's like more like a friendship or peers or something, but like definitely that network of people who really see your potential, who you're going to be able to talk to, and who are going to like support you as you kind of go about your journey.
Allies, ally with one another.
Absolutely. And it's like, being more open about the challenges and going and also proposing solutions, right? Many times it's like you will be in a better place to propose what the solution is. So thinking more creatively of what that can be. And that just improves the situation for many others too.
And encourage more women to study STEM, right?
Absolutely. Definitely from an early age, but stick with it, right? I worry that we get women interested in STEM and then they get discouraged by the environment. And that's not,
And that usually happens in high school, right?
I think so. I do think it often happens in the high school era and early college.
So I do want to recommend for high school women and underrepresented communities, there's a program called AI for All, where in summers you're matched with a faculty and you get to work on AI projects. And I think that's a great way to kind of hone in the AI skills, but also just see, what gets you excited. Like, are you passionate about applying that to, say, health or other domains? And I think, those kind of programs hopefully can help overcome some of these issues.
Any other big words of advice for the women here?
Wow, I'm being put on the spot. Okay, yeah. Maybe using kind of all those kind of skills that we want to describe it, whether that's like, kind of perseverant or emotional intelligence or whatever, kind of go for it. Like, don't give up. Like, look to find people who you can kind of resonate with. Like, there's a lot of different ways to have like careers. So, again, sometimes like, especially if you're looking at kind of like male leaders in the field, you might see them and be like, gosh, I don't want to be like that. Like, I couldn't be like that, and not even in a good way. But there are like a lot of other people who are probably, going to be people that you can like relate to like much more. And so like, sort of find those people, kind of find your community and your network, to really help push yourself forward.
And we have to leave it there. Maithra Raghu, thank you. Professor Anima Anandkumar, thank you. And Christine Fox, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. And good luck.
Thank you.
How did that? That was a